I never meant to ruin a wedding. I didn't even know he was taken. I was just a girl, hiding behind a microphone in a dusty church basement. But the moment he heard my voice, something changed. And the next thing I knew, his whole world, and mine, flipped. Before I take you through this unbelievable twist of fate, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a single love story that reminds us how fate can find you in the most unexpected places. I grew up in a little town where everybody knows everybody. The kind of place where the grocery store cashier asks about your grandma before bagging your apples, and where Friday night football is practically a holiday. I was always the quiet girl, the one who slipped into church early and left before anyone could stop me to talk. But I had this thing inside me, music. Not the kind that wants a stage or an audience, just songs that lived in my chest and came out soft and honest. I started singing in our church choir when I was 7. My mama used to say I hummed before I even talked. I never thought much of it. It was just something that made me feel calm, like I could breathe a little easier when everything else felt tight. Some girls dreamed about big lights and crowds cheering. Not me. I just wanted to feel seen in a world that mostly passed me by. So, when Miss Clara from church asked if I could sing at a little community event in the basement, I said yes without thinking twice. It wasn't a concert, no stage, just a room full of foldable chairs, lukewarm coffee, and a few old speakers hooked to a mic that only halfway worked. But that was fine by me. I didn't need anything big. I wasn't looking for anyone's attention. I just wanted to sing the way I always had, honest and from the heart. That night, I didn't know who would be listening. I didn't even care. I just closed my eyes, took a breath, and let the music carry me. That was supposed to be it. Just a few songs and home before 9. I had no idea everything was about to change. It was a small event, nothing fancy. Just a few dozen people gathered for what they called a community hope night. There were tables with cookies, flyers about food drives, and those awkward folding chairs that creak every time someone shifts. I showed up early to do a quick mic check and sat in the back with my tea, waiting for my turn. I didn't even notice him come in at first. He wasn't loud or flashy, just present, tall, dressed in a neat button-down, with this thoughtful kind of stillness about him. He walked in with a woman, beautiful, elegant, and clearly in charge. She was talking to someone at the front about a donation or maybe catering. I don't remember exactly. But he looked kind of distant, like his body was there, but his mind wasn't. When it was finally my turn to sing, I kept my eyes on the floor, then the mic stand, then closed my eyes altogether. I sang something soft, an old hymn that reminded me of home. I didn't even realize he was still in the room until I finished and opened my eyes. That's when I saw him, standing in the back, completely still, like he couldn't move. After the event, I was packing up when he came over. He introduced himself, Mark. He said my voice reminded him of something he'd forgotten. I laughed awkwardly, thanked him, tried to stay polite. Then he said something I didn't expect. I'm getting married in 3 weeks, but I don't know why that song made me feel like I should run. I didn't know what to say. I just stood there, stunned. All I could manage was a soft, "Congratulations," before he smiled faintly and walked away. But something inside me had shifted, and I could feel it. A few days later, I ran into him again. It wasn't planned, not really. I was dropping off some sheet music at the church office when I saw him outside, sitting alone on the steps with a to-go cup in his hands. He looked up, surprised to see me. I nodded politely, thinking I'd just keep walking, but he stood and said, "Hey, got a minute?" I hesitated, but something in his voice made me pause. So I sat. He told me he hadn't been back to church in years, that his fiancée was the reason he was there that night. She was organizing the charity dinner, and he had tagged along to carry boxes. He chuckled, almost embarrassed. Said he wasn't much of a church guy, but something about that basement and my singing stirred up emotions he hadn't let himself feel in a long time. Then he got quiet, real quiet. He looked down at his hands and said, I think I'm marrying her because it's what's expected. She's amazing, smart, driven, kind, but I feel like I'm on a train I never meant to board. I didn't know what to say. I barely knew this man, but I could tell he wasn't looking for advice. He just needed to say it out loud to someone who wasn't involved. I'm sorry, he added quickly. I shouldn't be saying this to you. It's just that song you sang about peace in the storm. It felt like something inside me cracked open. I nodded gently. Music does that, I said softly. We sat in silence for a moment before I told him I had to go. He smiled, thanked me for listening, and let me walk away. I told myself not to think too hard about it, but that moment stuck with me. After that conversation on the church steps, I figured I wouldn't see him again. He had gotten something off his chest, and I assumed that was the end of it. But then, the following week, I saw him again, sitting quietly in the back during Wednesday night practice. I was startled, honestly. I wasn't performing, just rehearsing with the choir. But there he was. Same stillness, same look in his eyes. This time, I smiled at him. A small, polite smile. He waited until rehearsal was over, then helped me carry a box of hymnals to the storage closet. Said he wasn't sure why he came back, but being there gave him peace. It became a pattern. He never crossed any lines, never said or did anything inappropriate. He just showed up, sat in the back, and helped out when no one else was looking. We started talking more, not about love, not about feelings, just life, family, childhood. He told me he used to play the piano when he was a kid. I told him about losing my mom and how singing helped me breathe through grief. I started to look forward to those conversations. They were soft and easy, like we both needed a break from the noise of the world. But I also knew it was dangerous, this closeness. He wasn't mine to hope for. He belonged to someone else, and I reminded myself of that constantly. Still, late at night, I'd think about his quiet laugh, or how he listened so closely when I spoke, like my words mattered. I kept telling myself it was nothing, but deep down, I already knew. There was a connection growing between us, gentle, quiet, and impossible to ignore. It was a Thursday evening, the kind where the air feels thick and quiet, like something's about to shift. Choir practice had ended early, and most folks had already left, but I stayed behind. I don't know why. Maybe I just needed a moment alone. I sat at the piano in the corner of the basement, the one with two sticky keys and a leg that wobbled. I hadn't played in years, but my fingers found the chords like they never forgot. And then I started to sing, not for the choir, not for anyone else, just for me. It was a song I'd written after my mama passed, a song I'd never shared. It wasn't polished or perfect. It was raw, honest, the kind that comes from a place deep inside that you don't show to just anyone. When I finished, I heard a soft voice behind me. That was beautiful. I turned and there he was, Mark, standing in the doorway. I hadn't even known he was there. He looked shaken, like something in him had cracked open. He didn't speak right away, just walked in slowly and sat in the chair across from me. Then, barely above a whisper, he said, I've never felt heard until now. I didn't know what to do with that. I just sat there, heart pounding, unsure of what it all meant. He stood up after a while and said, I need to figure some things out. Then he left. The next day, he didn't come by. or the day after that. And just like that, he was gone. I tried to forget it, tried to go back to normal, but something had changed inside me that night. And deep down, I think something had changed in him too. It had been over a week since I saw him. No texts, no drop ins, nothing. I figured he'd made his decision to move forward with the wedding, to stick with the life already planned out for him. And honestly, I respected that. It hurt, but it was the right thing to do. I never wanted to be the reason for anyone's pain. Then, on a quiet Saturday morning, my phone buzzed with a message from a friend. "Girl, did you hear what happened at St. Mark's?" I hadn't. She sent another message, then another. My hands started shaking as I read. He stopped the wedding, in front of everyone. I couldn't believe it. Part of me didn't want to. I felt sick, overwhelmed, confused, and if I'm being honest, terrified. I had no idea if it had anything to do with me, and I didn't want to assume it did. That afternoon, I stayed in my room. I didn't answer calls, didn't go out. I just sat by my window, staring out at nothing, heart racing. Then, as the sun started to set, I heard a knock at the back door of the church, the one nobody used except the choir. It was him. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, still wearing a suit, no tie, eyes full of something I couldn't name. He didn't say hello, didn't make small talk. He just stood there for a moment before whispering, "I couldn't do it." I nodded slowly, not trusting my voice. Then he said, "All I could hear was your voice, that song." And I realized I was about to say yes to a life that wasn't mine anymore. My breath caught, and just like that, the silence between us finally made sense. We sat down on the old church steps, the same ones where he first told me he was engaged. The air between us felt heavy, but not tense, just full of all the things we hadn't said yet. He looked at me, eyes tired but clear, and said, "I know how it sounds. I didn't plan this. I wasn't looking to fall for someone else." I nodded, still silent. I needed to hear him, all of it. He went on, "She's a good person. She didn't deserve what I did today, but I would have hurt her more if I'd gone through with it, while my heart was somewhere else." That's when I finally found my voice. I said softly, "I never meant for this to happen either." He smiled a little, the sad kind. "I know. You didn't try to pull me away. You didn't chase me. But being around you, it reminded me of who I used to be before I started living a life that looked right but didn't feel right." I felt my eyes sting. I wanted to protect him from the judgment, from the guilt I knew he was carrying, but I also knew that wasn't my job. He had to walk through this storm himself. So I said, "Whatever happens next, just promise me you'll be honest, with yourself and with her." He nodded, then looked down. "I already was." She cried, but she said she knew. She saw it coming before I did. We didn't talk much after that, just sat quietly as the evening light faded behind the stained glass windows. No promises, no declarations, just the quiet truth between us, raw, painful, and real. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something neither of us expected. The days that followed were quiet, not dramatic, not full of sweeping romance or grand gestures, just slow, steady days where healing took the lead. Mark didn't rush back into my life, not in the way movies show, where everything clicks instantly and ends in fireworks. Instead, he gave me space, gave himself time, too. We'd exchange a few texts, sometimes just a photo of a coffee cup or a line from a song. Nothing heavy, just presence. I went on with my life, kept singing at church, took on a few music lessons for kids in the community, tried not to overthink it. But every time I sat at that old piano, my heart would wander back to him. A few weeks later, he showed up again. This time not in a suit, but in jeans and a hoodie, holding 2 cups of tea. We walked to the park nearby, talked about the little things, laughed more than I expected. And at one point, while watching a little girl run around chasing bubbles, he turned to me and said, "I don't know what this is yet, but I want to take my time and do it right." I smiled, heart fluttering in that quiet way it does when something feels safe. I told him, "We don't have to name it yet. Let's just keep showing up." And we did. Some days were light, some were heavy. There were still questions, still scars from what he left behind. But there was also music, tea, laughter, and a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't about rushing toward love. It was about rebuilding, slowly, truthfully, one day at a time. And in all that gentle becoming, something beautiful began to grow between us. It's funny how life can twist and stretch you, then settle you down in places you never expected. I used to think peace came after everything was fixed, after all the right decisions were made, after all the pain had passed. But now I know, peace isn't the absence of storms. It's learning how to breathe through them. Mark and I didn't become a fairy tale. We didn't leap into love. We walked into it slowly, gently, with full awareness of what we'd each been through. There were awkward talks, long silences, moments of doubt, but there was also understanding, grace, room for both of us to just be human. He never tried to pretend the past didn't exist. He carried it with him, but not as a weight, more like a reminder of who he didn't want to be anymore. And me? I kept singing. Not for the crowd, not even for him, just because it still helped me breathe. I started writing more, singing my own songs, helping others find their voice too. Somehow, without planning it, my little life got fuller, softer, braver. There were no big endings, no dramatic kisses in the rain, just the quiet knowing that what we'd found was real. Sometimes we still sit in that church basement. No crowd, no mic, just him, me, and that old piano. I'll sing, he'll listen, and every now and then he'll hum along, off key, a little late, but completely at peace. Looking back, I never expected any of this. I didn't ask for it, didn't chase it. I was just a girl singing in a quiet corner of the world, and somehow, that was enough to change everything. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Love finds us in the most unexpected places, and I'll be here to tell you every story that proves it. Love.